respected Shri Peter Kamalji, Harvinder Singh ji, Harish Balalji, Ranjan Shetty ji, brothers and sisters of the banking fraternity. As a chartered accountant, I always faced it from the other side. Today also is no exception. And I must say at the outset, I am really stumped by the hospitality rendered by this great institution, organization. It's almost every other week we are in some meeting or addressing some gathering, but rarely I have seen such warmth, personal touch. My salutations to all of you. Rarely I have seen such mellifluous rendering of the Vaishnava Janata. I must salute my sisters who stand up front. Because it's not only we have forgotten Gandhiji, we have forgotten all that is associated with Gandhiji. So it's very heartening to note that absolutely perfectly it was surrendered. I also wish the chairman's dream to come true by 31st December. And I pray for it, sir. And I sincerely hope that when you touch 2 lakh crores, I will be sitting somewhere applauding all of you. When Mr. Bharat approached me and said, why don't you come over? I said, listening to me is always injurious to the mental health. We also put that as a statutory warning in the invitation. He said, no, you come. Then he sent me the invite and I saw the pantheons of people, the greats whom I adored, have addressed you in this gathering. Madhuji Dandavati, George G. Fernandez, then we had Krishna Ji, we had N. Ram, Sri Gurumurthy, so many greats who have addressed you. I thought perhaps this is some Adi Talipudi sales, discount, that you have called me to level the whole thing. I feel very humbled that I am also in that list. So, with this brief observation, let me make my presentation for the day on the financial sector, which is very close to my heart. When I started doing BCom, the first sentence we always hear is India is a poor country. I am really stumped. Where from we get this idea that India is a poor country? I asked my father, is it true India is a poor country? He says, when I read BCom, the first sentence in my economic book was also, India is a poor country. So this, in fact, was told to me by my Guru Gurumurthy ji, with whom I work. He says that this idea that India is a poor country is somehow embedded in our minds. But factually what is happening is something astounding. I will give you a small information. The total import of gold into India for financial year 11-12 and 12-13 was in the order of $55 billion every year. $55 billion of gold imported year on year. And we have the mandarins in the North Block telling us foreign direct investment of $10 billion is expected this year. What is gold? Gold is outbound foreign direct investment. We give foreigners $55 billion and beg for $10 billion. Look at the contrast. We are actually investing in one sector, gold outside India, $55 billion, not by XYZ, it is by collectively by all Indians. $55 billion. And contrast it with $10, $15 billion. This year the total savings in India in 1991 was 18% of the GDP. Today we say, oh, we are spending too much, banks are giving too much of consumer loan, people are seeing so much of malls, so much of TV, so much of houses, so much of riches. But average savings in the economy is now 33-34%. Our ladies are too smart, you cannot cheat them. They know how to maneuver everything, and this is the most cunning thing. Liberalization started. We assume that we are spending more, but actually we are saving more. 33-34% of the GDP, 1/3 of the economy is production is saved. Our investment rate is 36%. 2 or 3% is what is the gap, investment gap. That is what comes from outside. If it comes, it comes. If it doesn't come, it doesn't come. I always tell my students, this 2%, 3% is like a pickle in a Gujarati thali. So one fellow said, why is it Gujarati thali? I said, in Gujarat there is no pickle. If it is Andhra thali, you should understand. Then another fellow said, sir, nowadays you should say Telangana thali. You should be very careful. So you have to understand that in India, foreign investment is a much minuscule portion. It is not that one need to oppose it, one need to welcome it. But it is not Allah Buddha Christ mode, like what it is made of. It is 2 or 3% of the total investment space, maximum 4%, 5%, but occupies 95% of our mental space, 95% of our policy space, 95% of the debating space. And we all think it is foreign money that will drive Indian economy. Little realizing that Indian money is actually driving the Indian economy. Not only Indian money, Indian consumption is driving, Indian production is driving, Indian consumption is driving, Indian investment is driving. Economics is a very simple subject made complicated by economists. You produce, your production must be for consumption, consumption must be tempered so that you have savings, savings must lead to investment, investment must lead to production. Simple. If there is any mismatch, you require taxation policy, you require foreign direct investment policy, you require this policy, that policy. All these are artificial things to tinker around the whole thing. But if this is right, nothing is to be done. You have to only pray that everything goes on well and rains come. That's all you have to do. But what is happening is, we think, or rather the economists think, that they drive the economy. Economy is not driven by them. Production happens on its own. The farmer is doing his own business. The small scale people are doing their own business. The housewife is consuming. And she has to consume not because there is taxes or no taxes, inflation or no inflation. Onion has to be purchased whether it's 100 rupees or 200 rupees a kilo. Because you have children in the home, you have to feed them. So consumption goes on, production goes on, savings goes on, because Indians know there is nothing called social security. They have to save. And the saving comes, that is why I am sure your target will come not because I am a prophet, but I am sure the Indians are saving so much that they will put money in the bank. And money is in the bank, you automatically have, you cannot keep it in your tichori, you have to lend it. Your business will be reached. I think our total banking advances is around 50 lakh crores and deposits around 70 lakh crores. Pardon me if I am wrong by a few lakh crores. But this money is the money that is there from Indians. And year on year, it is going to compound at the rate of around 20%. That is the compounding rate that the deposits and the advances are going to go up. Look at the money that we are doing. And that money predominantly comes to the banking. In 1990s, when I passed out, we had a great fancy for stock markets. That time it was Harshad Mehta. And I thought, putting the money in the stock market would be the best thing, and started advising. Several of my clients told me, don't give this advice to us. Give only 2 advice if you want to prosper. Buy gold, buy land, put money in banks. These are the 2-3 advices you give, otherwise don't give any advice. And today, whether those all who have put money in these 3 sectors have prospered. So you have to understand that the enormous role that the banking sector plays in the nation building, more so the nationalized banks. And this is the model that most of the world understands in this part of the world, whether it is Japan, whether it is Korea, whether it is Philippines. Many of these places it is bank-driven, tech-driven model that actually goes on. But there is another issue today. There is a huge problem that is also facing this banking sector. Just as the banking sector has the potential to explode and become an engine of growth, there is a huge challenge. And I will relate two anecdotal references. Just I told that the money parked through gold outside India is $55 billion. The total investment made by Indian corporates in the 7-year period between 2005 and 2012 through outbound foreign direct investment is $100 billion. I repeat this is a stunning information. Indian corporates have invested $100 billion abroad in the last 7 years. And we say we are a poor country. We must always have that. A poor country has been able to invest $100 billion in 7 years. That is almost $14 billion every year. Huge money being invested. But the problem is, not all this money are today performing well. I did an RTI and I found out that the return on this 100 billion is not something that I can tell this audience. At least $6 billion is what we must get as return in the aggregate. We don't get it. Where is the money gone? Or our overseas subsidiaries suspect? This question is now haunting us. The second anecdotal reference. I was invited to a restructuring of a corporate not so long ago. It was a breakfast meeting. I started having breakfast and I was the only one who was happily eating. And the entire team of the company, the finance manager, CFO, accountant, everybody was there. And it looked they had come for a funeral. They were all so silent. After some time I asked them, what is your problem? I saw in the balance sheet that they were dividend paying, tax paying. They are very happy. Profit making company. I said, why do you want to restructure a profit making, dividend paying, tax paying company? Everything is alright. They did not say anything. One fellow said, sir, we are having enormous cash crunch, this problem is there, that problem is there. Bank is not giving us money. I said, when you are declaring profits, when you say you are paying taxes and you are paying dividends, why should a bank give you more money? You should give money to the bank. He said, sir, you are not understanding our problem. What is this? Then I went through their balance sheet in great detail. They had invested 1,000 crores in 152 subsidiaries. The return on 1,000 crores was 1 crore. In fact, less than 1 crore. I asked them, where is this money? What happened to this money? Where it has gone? Sir, these are questions you should not ask. We are in infrastructure. We have huge money to be paid off as kickbacks. And we cannot take trolley bags of cash to people. We have to pay through overseas subsidiaries, so many other mechanisms. That is why we got good chartered accountants. And we are part of this. Majority of this 1,000 crores is such kickbacks. Now I asked them further and I found that a normal 100 crore road project is now coming to 150 crore because of your bribe component, or what we call as corruption component. So, a 100 rupee toll for that distance is not 100 rupees but 150 rupees. And this was okay when the economy was growing at 9%. People don't mind when things are okay. When there is huge cash flow, you don't mind paying 150 bucks, keep the change. and you just drive off. But today, when the economy is struggling, people are not able to pay that 150 rupee toll. You are not able to collect that toll. You are not able to give that money to the bank. And there are something around 20% of the total advances of the Indian banking system stressed. Just stressed. There is a Credit Suisse report, very interesting. It says 10 of the major Indian conglomerates, forget the Tatas and Dhirubhai Ambani group, it talks about Anil Ambani group, it talks about GMR, GVK, Videocon, Vedanta, Langor, JSW, SR, all these 10 groups. The total advances was around 2.6% of the total advances made by the banking sector to these 5 groups in the year 2007. In year 2012, it was 13%. That means banking sector money virtually has gone to these 10 groups, and most of these groups are in infrastructure. And if you look at the balance sheet and the profit and loss account, 4 of these 10, I will not name them, are not earning enough income to pay interest for their capital. So look at the state which we are in, that we are creating stress on the financial system to that humongous level. And this, we have got around 60,000 megawatts, just I am giving you one example. We have got another 60,000 megawatts to be added to the capacity of our power plants in the next 3 years. This Credit Suisse report says, in 2014, so much megawatt will become NPA. 2015, so much megawatt will become NPA. 2016, so much megawatt will become NPA. Why? Because we don't have a proper policy of integrating thermal plants to the production, from production into the grid, from grid to usage. There is a huge governance issue. Just in thermal plant alone, they say in the next 3 years, 3 to 4 lakh crores of possible NPS can come. We are not only on the larger problems of large infrastructure companies. Come to small companies. We are actually shifting our office in Chennai to a new premises. I went to find some good furniture for my office. Wherever I go, there is one thing is common. The furniture is made in China. Vinayaka Chaturthi, Ganesha comes from made in China. Holy powder for Holi comes from China. Raksha Bandhan for Rakhi comes from China. Consumed in India, made in China. Today. And with China, we run a trade deficit of $45 billion. And we don't import crude, we don't import gold, we don't import anything sophisticated. We only import pen, pencil, rubber, all these type of normal things, cardboard boxes, all these things which was manufactured by small scale industries has been completely wiped off. Small and medium scale industries are again in stress because of huge imports from China. Again, this is creating problems for the financial sector. China is just putting, whether it is good, as a consumer I am happy, I am getting the furniture, same table I saw at 2 shops. One shop made in India, 45,000, the same shop, another shop, same made, 14,000 rupees. Where will I buy? I am going to buy only from the Chinese made shop. I know it will not work for more than 3 years, but so be it. I can buy 3 tables. This is the level to which we have boxed ourselves to uncompetitiveness. So naturally, we are not only importing from China. China is not the only country which is putting goods into our table. 85 countries we run trade deficits. Look at us bankers, you must be panicking by this particular number. 85 countries you can produce a particular good, manufacture it, pay the relevant transportation charges, shipping charges, pay the custom duty, enter India, yet be competitive in India. We have completely dynamited ourselves, we have completely boxed ourselves into an uncompetitive situation. So the only solution is either depreciate the rupee to 70 or you raise customs duties. If you raise customs duties, there is a problem. The problem is you will not be called liberalized, globalized. If you allow rupee to depreciate, that charge will not be there. But the problem is your diesel prices will not be 60 but 70. Your petrol will not be 80, it will be 100. Your inflation will not be 12, it will be 15, 18. Then you have to raise interest rates. If you have to raise interest rates, you have other problems. Already manufacturing sector is sacked up. How do you raise the whole thing? We are finding it extremely difficult to find answers to these type of fundamental issues. We require a national restructuring program. We want, just like a company has to be restructured, the country has to be restructured. And I wish tomorrow when you start deliberating, you must start and revisit the subject whether NPA norms should be diluted for the next 3 years. There is no point in shooting yourself and saying that 3 months, if you don't pay interest or principal or both, you are achieving an untouchable status. This is putting stress on the banking sector, putting stress on the manufacturing sector. I always tell my clients that never borrow 50 crores from a bank, NPA norms apply, borrow 5,000 crores or 6,000 crores, the country will ensure that you are paid out. And I always tell my students the best example is Mr. Vijay Mallya. When Kingfisher stopped the operation, the share prices of Kingfisher did not go down. Share prices of State Bank of India went down. The State Bank of India people have to pray to Lord Venkatachalapati to keep Mr. Mallya alive, well, kicking, working. Mr. Vijay Mallya can play golf, he can watch IPL, he can go F1, he can do whatever. So please understand, everybody cannot be a 6,000 crore borrower, 60,000 crore borrower. We are stuck because of a variety of reasons, not the least being governance. So we have to understand that we have to revisit. Probably, this requires, I am making off the cuff on a keynote address, that's only to make you think. Perhaps Vijaya Bank can initiate a chair with one of the universities recognized universities in Karnataka, could be Manipal, could be anybody who is well versed, and do a study whether the current norms of NPA identification and provisioning needs to be continued in the context of this dismal performance at the national level with all sectors. It is not one or two sectors. And as auditors I know, as bankers you know, we are skating on razor's edge on almost every account. And it is touch and go almost on every other account. The financial sector cannot be declared insolvent. Financial sector cannot be declared stressed. You can have stressed accounts within the financial sector, but we cannot have a financial sector that is stressed. We require to debate on this policy, and I hope that the morning's proceedings will take this up in right earnest. This is my humble suggestion. Coming back to the subject, it is not only that we are faring badly on these type of issues. Let me go through some of the facts that we have with me. It is that suddenly we see skilled labor is no more in existence. These are practical problems of working in India. We can't have a manufacturing sector. We require a manufacturing sector to power ourselves. Manufacturing sector grew at around double-digit growth rates in 2006, 2007, 2008. That is why we achieved 9% growth rate. But today, we have fallen to 4% and 5% because the manufacturing sector is growing less than 2%. How to revive manufacturing sector? We can revive manufacturing sector provided we have power, we have labor, we have capital. All these things is okay. This is theory. You don't get plumber. You don't get driver. Semi-skilled. I am not talking about high intense usage of skilled labor. Semi-skilled labor in cities and in rural areas are not available. And where do we find it? In my state, we run what is called a Stashback shop. This is the liquor shop sponsored by the government. Morning 10 o'clock there is a queue. Before the shop, the shutter is lifted, people are there. Just like ration shop. Free TV, free fridge, free grinder, free mixie, 1 rupee rice, 80 rupee liquor. See the paradox. A country cannot be built on this type of loose economics. It is easy to garner votes with these type of economics. All of us have to speak. It is not that you have to speak or I have to speak. All of us have to speak whether this is the correct economics. Time has to come to say that this economics cannot work. 80 rupees for liquor, 20 rupees for mineral water, and 1 rupee for a kg of rice. Person has no incentive to work. Why should he? And he gets 150 rupees a day as in a Riga. Consider this. Between 90s, Burkina Faso, one of those poor African countries, have reduced their proportion of undernourished from 14% to 8%. Congo from 42 to 13. Honduras from 19 to 12. Niger from 37 to 16. Nigeria from 16 to 6. Sudan from 39 to 22. We have reduced it from 20% to 19.7%. In the last 20 years, malnourishment. Coming to seeing the undernourished child, Ethiopia 35%, Bangladesh 41%, Bhutan 13%, Burundi 35%, Afghanistan 28%, Liberia 14%, India 44%. Undernourished children. On ease of doing business, you should understand how difficult, and I'm sure many of you would be seeing this from your clients, but just understand this. It is startling. The World Bank says India ranks 132 out of 185 countries when it comes to ease of doing business. But hang on. When it comes to enforcing a contract in India, we are ranked 184 out of 185 countries. It is easy to sign a contract in Afghanistan and hope that the Afghans will honor the promise. It is easy to sign in Iraq, in Liberia, in Libya, in Sudan. Only country that fares worse than us is Timor Leste. And we must thank them because we are not in the bottom of the list. So where is the confidence that the businessman will have that you enter into a contract? Today the problem is not only that. It is not that I enter into a contract with Mr. Shenoy and say that Shenoy has released on the promise I take him to the court. Immediately the lawyer will say, sir, it will take 20 years. 20 years to settle a contract is a civil dispute. Criminal will take much more. But the problem is, we are entering into a phase where you enter into a contract with the government, there is no guarantee that the contract will be held valid. 2G is a classical example, but I thought 2G was a very recent example. I was talking to Mr. Arvind Datta, he has written a brilliant piece in the Hindu last week. He says this reneging promise comes from so much of years back when we reneged on the promise on Privy Purses. Privy Purses was a contract given to the Maharajas for 4 crore rupees. We said no. Our ideology is important, so we reneged on that promise. So we are not seen as a country of people who will honor the contracts. We can say so many things about ourselves, but the fact of the matter is when it comes to honoring contracts, nobody feels confident that we are seen as a country which will honor contracts. Not only with individuals, but with corporates, with governments. I will come to another major issue that the foreigners feel with India. Whenever an investment happens, I don't only look at foreigners, but frankly I have more clients who are Indians, and the biggest problem Indians face today is that there is no way that a law will be framed and held constant. You win a case with the income tax department says you are wrong. He goes to the commissioner appeal, you win. He goes to the tribunal, you win. He goes to the high court, you win. He goes to the Supreme Court, you win. That is not the end of the matter. Government will retrospectively amend the Act from 1960. It is like declaring that from 1961 Dharmendra is the hero and nobody else, Shah Rukh Khan is not born. How can you do business when you do not know the field below you will be taken out tomorrow or not? These are the problems that the business community faces. We as people in the financial sector are watching this whole thing happen time, year, again and again and again. Income tax is one case where you know why the budget is heard by the chartered accountants. We have no interest on the budget, frankly. We would like to know which law is amended retrospectively and which are our clients will be in problems so that we can make it. The income tax is a boon given to the chartered accountants by the government of India. It's a gold mine. Not my words, it is Mark Nani Palkiwala's words. So we need to look at all these things in a comprehensive manner. There is another problem. This is the problem with which I think I will finally close and I will leave the floor open. Much of this foreign direct investment which I talked about has gone abroad. $100 billion. Of which in 6 years I found out $40 billion has gone to tax havens like Mauritius. What has Mauritius got to do in investment? That too in manufacturing. You don't invest in Mauritius in manufacturing. Not only that, last year there was a huge debate, or even this year, whether India must allow foreign direct investment in retail or not. I am not going into that debate. But Indians have invested $5 billion outside India in retail and wholesale business in the last 5 years. And the government says we will get $5 billion in the best of circumstances if you open FDI in retail in the next 5 years. We have already sent $5 billion out. Then we are hoping that $5 billion will come in if you liberalize a particular situation. Do you see some sense in what we are doing? We are putting money in countries like Panama, in the Isle of Man, in Gibraltar. Precious foreign exchange is going out. Where does it go? How does it come back? Is it coming back? You know, I do a lot of work on certain corporates, and I find some of the questions are still unanswered. I know it is difficult to swallow. But we always talk about KYC, know your customer, know your client. I always say KYB, know your banker. Because with nationalized bank I have no problem. I know who is the owner of the bank, I am the owner of the bank. But several of the private sector banks in India, ownership is unknown. Who is the owner of some of the banks? We don't know. Who is the owner of some of the airline companies? We don't know. Who is the owner of some of the best consultancy firms in India? We don't know. But when in chambers of commerce, the booted and the suited come and say, oh, we should be transparent, we should be open, we should corporate governance, ethics. We are not a CSR program. But your ownership can be Osama sitting in Bahama. You don't talk about that. 67% of ICICI's ownership is outside in India. We don't know who it is. HDFC, Axis Bank, Jet Airways, Indigo. I can name several of them. But question is, these are all threatening the financial sector. With whom we are dealing, we do not know. And where is the money going, we do not know. Money is invariably coming from Mauritius. The largest investor in India in the last 10 years is Mauritius and Singapore. And Singapore, I say, is extension of Mylapore. And from there you get 12-15% of total FDI in the last 10 years. Mauritius you get 38%, 50% from these two small places. And Mauritius, if you think it is coming from the entire Mauritius, you are wrong. It is coming from the capital, you are wrong. If it is coming from one street, you are wrong. It is coming from one building, you are wrong. It is coming from one office space in Mauritius. Why? Because there is a double taxation avoidance agreement with Mauritius, where investment from Mauritius is not taxed in India. It is taxed in Mauritius, and the rate of tax in Mauritius is zero. So all that you have to do is take money abroad, take it to Mauritius, and from Mauritius you bring it back again. Several banks, not nationalized banks again. Private banks have lent money to subsidiaries abroad. Those monies have been brought through Mauritius route back to Indian stock market. And stock market is daily shaking like some cabaret dancer. And we don't know who is investing money. There is an instrument called participatory notes. It's called PNs for short. I call it phantom notes. Who is the owner? Don't know. SEBI don't know. RBI don't know. Finance Ministry don't know. DRI don't know. In chapter 2 of the Gita, the Lord defines himself. Weapons cannot cut me. Fire cannot burn me. Wind cannot dry me. Water cannot wet me. Participatory notes is something like this. SEBI cannot do anything to me. RBI does not know anything about me. Commissioner Income Tax does not cognize me. Finance Ministry is not at all bothered about me. We have such instruments. Yet we cannot say that our finance ministry is working. They are doing their best. I am not saying I am not finding fault with them. But believe me, these are all structural problems. The integrity of one financial sector, you cannot, when there is a tsunami, you cannot say Vijaya Bank will be insured. You cannot say that I will have no problem. You may be clean. Today your neighbor has also to be clean. The person with whom you deal has to be clean. Unfortunately, in India, this problem always exists. If I am okay, it's no more there. We have to not only be bothered about whom we deal in India, outside India also. We have these type of problems. Not only this, I will close with one more example, how dangerous banking has become now. Last year around this time, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal brought out some revelations. These revelations were actually pertaining to 2 employees in HSBC Zurich who got hold of one CD and ran to France. In France, people promptly arrested them, handed them over to the Swiss people, retained the CD. The CD had 129,000 names with account details. 79,000 names, after eliminating common names, we found 79,000 names, out of which 700 were Indians. And out of which 3 were questioned by the income tax department. The question posed to them was, did you go abroad? No, sir. You have bank accounts? No, sir. Only in this Canara Bank and Vijaya Bank, sir. Do you know Zurich? Where is Zurich? I don't know where is Zurich. Do you know HSBC Bank? I don't know HSBC Bank. Then 24th question. See this paper. You have got bank accounts in this bank, Zurich Bank, in HSBC Bank, Zurich branch. Yes. Now I remember. Don't be astounded. It is 100 rupees, 200 rupees you have forgotten. It is some 10 crores, 12 crores. One that you and I cannot have it in our lifetime. After retirement, many of us will not have it. That is the money parked there. How did you put the money there? You didn't go there. You say you have never been to Zurich. How did you go? Sir, answer this question, sir. Rubbish. We phoned one number in Zurich. Immediately one auto fellow comes, takes cash here. Takes away the money, he goes. Within seconds, my account is credited in yen, in yuan, in dollar, in pound sterling, whichever currency you want. Okay, what will happen if you want it back? Sir, yes sir, good question sir. My daughter got married. What did you do? I phoned the same number, delivery, immediately. Vijaya Bank doesn't do this. State Bank doesn't do this. HSBC does this. This is another issue that is troubling. How do we deal with these type of... The problem is Gresham's law. When bad circulates with good, bad will invariably drive out the good. Invariably it is important that the good must stand out and fight, otherwise it will be kicked out by the bad. 2 drunkards in a park of 400 people is enough to ensure that 400 people go out and the 2 drunkards will rule roost in the park. If 400 people don't drive out those 2 drunkards, the 400 people will have to deserve of the park. Simple example. Financial sector today is filled with roads. There are only 2 honest men and 400 drunkards. It is exactly the opposite. So ladies and gentlemen, we are in a threshold of something huge. We have a potential in the banking sector. Indian banking is going to get something phenomenal in the next 6 years. They say somewhere around 6 years down the line, the amount of deposit that the banking industry has today will be the aggregate deposits that will come in 1 year. By 2020 or 2021, the amount of deposits that will come into the banking sector will equal the amount today, the balance sheet figure today of all banks will be 1 year's deposits. Goldman Sachs says India requires $1.4 trillion to put its infrastructure in order. And it says a good portion, probably the entire money will come from India within its country. And this 1.4 trillion will be the engine of India's growth. And this money will not come from the stock market. Stock market, last year, you will find that it has raised 6,000 crores. In my state, some MLAs will have it. That is the type of money that we are talking about. 6,000 crores is peanuts for a country which has to talk about $1.5 trillion. And this money will come and get channelized to the banking sector. So you are poised on a great momentum forward. You are poised to be the engine of India's growth. But at the same time, you are surrounded by enormous challenges. The challenges are structural, the challenges are legal, the challenges are global, the challenges are certain operational. You have to be obvious to all these challenges. You have to be part of the solution. The solution is not going to come from heaven. The solution is not going to come from ministry. The solution is not going to come from economists. The solution is not going to come from outside. You have to be part of the solution. So my appeal to you, that please think about solution to all the challenges. Here we need to talk about certain fundamental issues that is going to put India on our path to glory. We are at a inflection point, where we either become one of the greatest countries in the world, or we go down as Gurunda of Saharan Africa. We have an opportunity, we have also a challenge. And you as bankers have been one of the forefront, one of the important people. And of the bankers, one of the clean banks, one of the respected banks, one of the greatest achievers are before. So you must, like Hanumanji who stood before Jambavan and not knowing his own strength, simply waiting before he crosses Lanka, you must all become Hanumanji and understand that your strength lies in taking the country forward. This appeal, I will stop and thank you all for a patient listening. Thank you.
Just heard M.R. Venkatesh made astonishing disclosures about the loopholes around the government to acquire ill-gotten wealth. Some of the statistics he read out are truly amazing, and I am aghast at the apathy of the government. The way to quote that $55 billion worth of gold we are importing, as the FDI is only $17 billion. The structural issues, be in terms of lack of skilled employees, parking money in the tax havens, $40 billion. Singapore is smaller than Bangalore. And some of the startling disclosures about HSBC. And he has listed out the challenges before the bankers. Probably the next decade, we will have to actually gear up to face those challenges. There is a Chinese proverb. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. We are sure, with the relentless efforts from economists like Mr. Mr. M.R. Venkatesh, India will at least alter its policies now to curb corruption, channelize the resultant huge corpus for inclusive growth. Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the Prime Minister of India, in 2001, he was the Prime Minister, he was the former Prime Minister of India, had released the M.R. Venkatesh book, A Handbook on Anti-Dumping. After hearing Mr. M.R. Venkatesh, we could now understand why such a great luminary was associated with Sri Venkatesh. Sir, thank you for your wonderful keynote address. Probably when you came and stood here, many of us thought that what this length, God will talk here. It was truly amazing. We now move on. Our beloved Chairman and Managing Director will be demitting office on 31st December 2013 after an eventful, illustrious tenure of almost 3 years in our bank. Our association may not get a better occasion than this because galaxy of leaders, guests and VGs from nook and corner of India have assembled here today in very large numbers. Hence, we take this opportunity to felicitate our beloved Chairman and Managing Director. May I request the ceremonial chair. As a probationary officer, way back in 13 November 1973, considering his vast knowledge, honesty, integrity, hard work, coupled with amazing HR and public speaking capabilities, he was elevated up to the cadre of General Manager in a very short span of time. Recognizing his multifaceted personality on 26 March 2009 and further elevated him as the Chairman and Managing Director of our beloved bank from 1st April 2011. With his vast experience and background, he has taken our bank to the pinnacle of glory. During his illustrious career spanning 4 decades, he has been showered with many awards as already enumerated by Sri Anish Ballal earlier. Sri H.S. Upendra Kamath is happily married to Srimati Shobha Kamath and is blessed with a son and daughter who are well settled in life. All India Vijaya Bank Officers Association, while wishing him all success in his life, are here to felicitate him now. May I call upon Sri Ranjan Shetty, General Secretary of our association, to felicitate Sri H.S. Upendra Kamath, our beloved Chairman and Managing Director. Please give him a great round of applause. Sri Ranjan Shetty is felicitating Sri Upendra Kamath, a short of validating him when our government election. Good possibility of Anish Ballal, Vice President of the guests are also joining in with the mountains of plenty of applause. It's a momentous occasion. We are all going to make applause.
Chairman and Managing Director of Vijaya Bank, who is also the chief guest of today's function. Comrade M.R. Venkatesh, who turned out to be not a chartered accountant, not a economist, but after the delivery of today's lecture, he has turned out to be a unionist. So, Comrade Venkatesh, architect of this great meeting function, General Secretary of course, and my comrade in arms in All India Bank Officers Confederation, Comrade Ranjan Shetty, Comrade Harish Ballal, Vice President of Vijaya Bank Officers Association, executives of Vijaya Bank, past leaders of Vijaya Bank Officer Association who are identifiable here, sitting on my right, leaders of other fraternal organizations from Vijaya Bank, and other organizations affiliated to United Forum of Bank Unions, General Secretary of Bank of India Officer Association and President, Comrade Madhusudan and Comrade Kumar, who have accompanied me to this venue, delegates and observers who have come from all over the country, and my dear comrades Vijays. I am indeed happy while I am standing before you on the eve of 15th General Body meeting of yours. I am really happy on many counts. The Vijaya Bank Officer Association, which is one of the smallest units of the Confederation, is showing a very big show by an example. The disciplined audience, comrades, soldiers of the organization, who are maintaining pin drop silence in this hall, which is overflowing, and people are standing outside also. The bonhomie which I have seen between the management and the organization is worth emulating. I didn't know, I could not understand earlier that when your chairman was describing the Venus figures here, you were all clapping. But when he told credit goes to you, nobody clapped. It seemed that you wanted to give the credit to your chairman only. Yes, that shows the bonhomie. He wants to be generous. He wants to be generous as a leader, and that is perhaps why the results of Vijaya Bank are so fantastic. Yes, friends, sitting at the board of Bank of India also, when our figures were compared with the peer banks, I was very happy. Around 29% of deposit growth and 29% of advances growth. Almost similar results have been declared by your chairman for this half year. I am really happy. The first generation nationalized banks and second generation nationalized banks, that is, your bank was nationalized on 20th of April 1980, are competing with each other. And friends, I am really hopeful that the figure which he has set for the date of his retirement, that is 2 lakh crores of meters, will certainly be achieved, because that is the practice. Nothing difficult in that sort, I am telling you. And when he started, he said, I have nothing to speak. As chairman of the bank, I want to get to the biggest figures only. But I am confident, when such type of understanding is there, such type of wonderful industrial relations are there, there is no need for the chairman to tell the biggest figures. These figures are known to the cadre down the line. It is only required is, let us change the goals. Goals of achievement of business figures are ours, and the desires which have been expressed by Comrade Ballal should be taken over by the chairman as partner. That will be the wonderful exercise. Once the audience has already clapped that they will be achieving 2 lakh of business crores, 2 lakh crores of business, I would at the end desire and request your chairman. He has told in his gracious announcement, he has told, let the appropriate time come, whatever your ambitions and aspirations are there, those will be taken care of. But sir, after 31st of December, perhaps you will not be able to do much. So my request